Next up, we're going to need to create our organization toggle. Now that's for a couple of reasons. So let's pretend that a user of Poke CRM is a marketing consultant and they have multiple different clients. Well, we want to be able to allow for them to create multiple accounts for the different business clients that they're working on. Another option could be you have one central business, but you might have different types of marketing teams. One external, one internal, like if you're using a consultant and you have your own internal team. Let's say you have a product line and you have multiple different marketing teams. They might have different accounts, but we want to allow for a user to be able to switch through different organizations that they are a part of. So if you remember, if we go back to our database here in org schema, we allow for this user orgs table here to allow for a relation between a user ID and an org and whether or not it's someone's primary org. And to just give more details on that, just a little reminder, a primary org is the organization that a user is currently actively working on. The one that if they're doing any actions like creating a new campaign or adding a contact, they're adding it to that specific organization. The relation between the org ID and the org user allows for us to track that a user might have multiple orgs and, whether or not a user is allowed to interact with a particular org ID. Now, you in particular, if you wanted to extend this project into the future, could add some extra permissions, let's say, to the user orgs table. Or you can create a separate table that's labeled user permissions and then add in specific permissions that you want someone to have. It's somewhat going to be similar to this org limitations, right? Org limitations is more of a way to track between Poke CRM, the business, and an organization user on the platform. How many emails they're allowed to have, if they have a subscription or not. That's going to be baked into our org limitations. We're going to have a separate table that tracks user subscriptions in this tutorial, but if you wanted to combine those, I can certainly see that that's reasonable. So that's kind of on the database side there, me going over that bit there. So just remember that when we use this organization toggle here, and we're going to allow for users to not only create a new organizations, why we have this API route here, right? Not just be able to do it in the onboarding, but create additional organizations as needed. We're going to need a way to set an organization to be primary. Like, hey, I'm working on team number 1. I want to switch to team number 2. And, create a new campaign for them or, do a bunch of different types of operations. We want to be able to allow for a user on the top left part here in the org toggle to be able to flip between team 1, team 2, team 3, etc., team N. Let's also think about, from a design perspective, what we're thinking about with the org toggle. So, we're going to have this header here, and the way that we have it set up between in the platform headers, we have the children, which holds this home. So if you remember how we put it within home platform headers, we have this home, and we have these 2 buttons within platform headers, and we're inserting it into this children bit, right? We're taking the children that's being passed in here as props into platform headers, and then we're dropping some extra stuff on the side here. And so we're going to need to create org toggle. And org toggle is going to be a button similar to how we have this user button, right? And let's go into user button just so that we remind ourselves what we used. So we used a drop-down menu here, right? And we're probably going to use something pretty similar in the user button. We're going to drop down, allow for a user to see all of the organizations that they have access to, and a little button that allows for them to create it. So instead of going to billing and log out, we're just going to have a couple of different options that'll just pop down lower. Cool. All right, so this organization toggle, where can we put it? So let me collapse everything and close down some of this stuff so that we can simplify what's on the editor. Let's go into features, organizations here, and we'll create a new folder and call it components. And so I'm just going to wrap this with organizations. You could put it within platform, the same place as platform headers, just because org toggle is really only going to be used in platform headers, but it's going to be using API calls that are going to be within the org's API. So personal preference on where you want to put it. I think that it makes more sense to put org toggle nearer to the API calls that it's going to use, but at the end of the day, feel free to do as you see fit. So we're going to create org toggle here, and let me make sure I'm able to write it. What are some of the things that it's going to need? So let's do our imports. So first off, we're going to do use client, because we're going to be making API calls with Tanstack. They're all going to be done with hooks, and so these hooks require client components. So we're going to specify use client there. We're going to import image from next/image. So if you remember during the onboarding, we're able to add upload an image using upload thing. And so we're going to want to be able to display that image. We're going to use router from next/navigation, not next/router. A little confusing, I know, but we're going to use from next/navigation here to allow for us to navigate if needed. Let's see here. So we're going to add in avatar from @/component/UI/avatar. Make sure you don't grab it from Radix UI. We're also going to need from avatar the avatar image here. We're going to import button from @/component/UI/button. We're going to grab cn from libutils. We're going to import orgs from @/db/org schema. We're going to import popover. Oh, so you know what? You can use the drop down menu if you'd like. I chose to use popover in my sample code, and so I guess I'll keep it consistent with it. So we'll just do npx shad cn at latest add popover here. We're going to say yes to that, and we're going to have it installed. There we go. And so now we can do popover content and popover trigger. Whoops. From @/component/UI/popover. Cool. So we'll get to see what popover looks like in a little bit later. We're going to do skeleton here for loading states. And we're going to do, we haven't created it yet. So how do we have use toast? We do not have use toast yet. So let me start adding some of that stuff. So we're going to need npx shad cn at latest add toast here. I believe that that's the right command. Let me just do shad cn real quick and see. Let's make sure that, because they just changed toast, I believe, between when I created the starter code and when I built it. Yep, it's okay. So it's add toast. Good. So it used to be called toaster, but now it is known as toast. So we need to specify that change. I know that threw me for a loop because how you use it is a lot different nowadays. So we're going to do import use toast, And if you recognize down here, they added something actually within our hooks, or added a new hooks directory here with a used toast hook. So whenever you want to use toasts, and just to kind of show you what a toast is, if you click on this show toast button, it creates a little pop-up here. And if you wanted a more stylish one, you can see a little bit of a destructive one. And here, let me do it in full screen to show that it shows up usually on the bottom right. But if you're on a smaller, like on a mobile phone, then it'll appear on the top. Okay, so use toast, which is going to be from @/hooks, hooks / use toast. And we're going to create our own API hooks here. So let's close it all up. Go to source app API route. And I could do it within orgs, but I think it'd be better to create a separate route for this. Call it user orgs.ts. So we're going to create a API route that allows for us to change which organization is the primary organization. So remember, if we have team 1, team 2, team 3, we in the org toggle will allow for a user to select which organization will be their primary org, and so that when they do actions within the dashboard and within the platform, they know which organization they're directly affecting. So cool. Inside of this use primary orgs function, we're going to call it actually a patch function, because the user orgs will already be in existence. We're just changing a field in the object, and so inside of the table, a column inside of the table. Let's use the right terms. And because of that, we're changing those values. We're not adding new stuff, and so it is a patch, not a post. It literally does not matter what you actually call the API routes, other than for readability sake. So, when someone looks at it at a glance, they see patch, they'll understand, okay, we're changing existing data. If they see post, okay, we're adding something new to the existing data set. Getting, obviously, to get, and then delete, obviously, to delete. So mostly for readability, but technically you could do gets and sets and gets and posts and whatever in any of these routes, just for readability's sake. All right. Verify auth. So we're going to need to do our authorization. We're going to do zvalidator. So we're going to use Zod here. And inside of this, we're going to be passing in some JSON. And in this JSON, we are going to be grabbing one specific thing, user orgs schema. So I do not have this yet. But basically what we're going to do is we're just going to grab the org ID, set this equal to true. What we're doing is, let me go to database, org schema, and we need to create export const insert user orgs schema is equal to create insert schema user orgs, right? So now we can grab this, there. So we are just, we're just going to pick the org ID, which is going to be passed within JSON. Cool. Okay, async context C, C short for context. Const user is equal to c.get authorized user here. If user does not exist, not user, c.json, we're going to return an error unauthorized. And pass in an error code of 401. I'm moving pretty fast since we already did it, but hopefully will be a good refresher. So we're gonna look for all the existing user orgs. So we're gonna do await db dot query user orgs find many where equals user orgs dot user ID matches the authorized user's ID. Cool. So we're going to grab all the user orgs within the table that has a matching user ID. If existing user orgs dot length is greater than is equal to 0, then we're going to return c.json. It's going to be an error. User does not belong to any orgs. And we're going to pass in 400 here. So we're going to return an error. If there are no user orgs, then we can't really set anything to be primary. So we're going to now move on and grab our user ID, c.require valid JSON. And that's how we pull our user ID here from the passed in JSON. Const selected org. So now we're going to pick from our existing user orgs. We're going to find an a user org. So I'm going to call it UO for short. UO. If there's a UO.org ID that matches or is equal to the passed in org ID. Whoops. And let me spell that correctly. Or not spell it correctly, but format it correctly. If selected org already is primary, then return c.json an error. Org is already primary. Error code of 400. Then we're going to set all of the user orgs that is not the specified org to be not primary. So we're going to do await db.query, update. And it's a function. We're going to pass in user orgs dot set, specifically is primary to be false. And we're only going to do that for where two things are true. So we're going to use and here. We're going to do equals user orgs dot user ID matches the user ID. So only for this current user's IDs. And is not equal, so NE, not equal, user orgs dot org ID, org ID. So the specified one, don't touch it, but for every single other one that matches the user's that has a user ID column that matches the user's the authorized user's ID, then change all of their is primary column values to be false. And then await db.update user orgs dot set is primary to be true for the situation where we have user orgs dot user ID user dot ID. Oh my goodness, spell it correctly. And we're going to do equals, so the opposite of this, not equals, user orgs dot org ID org ID. Cool. What's wrong with this? Shouldn't have anything that's wrong. Let's see. Did I mess something up? Oh. I forgot an equals to over here. There we go. Cool. And if everything is successful, then we return c.json message primary org updated. And we're going to remember to export, default, not const, app. And then we're going to go into our routes. We're going to import it. Import user orgs from / user orgs. And then we're going to add that route. that looks reasonable, Copilot. So user orgs, and then we're going to pass in this user orgs here. We're going to save it. And then now we need to create the hook. So inside of source, features, orgs, API, we're going to do use set primary org.ts. I believe this is the first mutation that we're going to be doing. So this is going to be a different than this simple get function. And oh wait, did we not actually? Oh, we already did it. Oh, right. For the create new org. So this is going to be basically very similar. So let me just copy paste all of this. We need to create the query keys. So let's go into library. We're going to go into query keys. Create the query key real quick. User orgs query key. There we go. That all looks reasonable. Oh, actually, user orgs there. And so we're going to do user orgs colon. And yeah, so that. And home is going to be changed because home needs to know which is the primary organization. Organization does not need to care about the, organization doesn't care about the user orgs. So home is going to change if anything happens to orgs, and home is going to change if anything happens to user orgs. Technically, we don't have an API call that's wholly dependent on orgs, so this may be optional, but I'm just going to keep it just to be safe. So cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this out for user orgs query key. I'm going to get rid of this query key here. And instead of orgs here, we're going to do user orgs. And I use a square bracket notation because if you have this hyphen here, you can't do this dot operator. So you're going to need this arrays. And if you use this arrays, then all of the rest of it needs to be in the square bracket notation. So let's see here. We're going to copy this here and then paste this here. Oops. Get rid of this post here. And then we're going to do the same thing. So we need to get rid of the post. Oops, I copied API again. There we go. And everything seems to work. We just need to change the name. Set primary org. I did not spell that correctly. Primary. Whoops. That Mary. Primary organization. Okay, cool. Let me just do it once over again. All these copy pastes, you could always mess something up. But everything looks reasonable. Cool. If you wanted to add an error, you can also do like an on error. I'm not going to need it because I haven't ever come up with a situation in which this error triggers. This error is not the same error as in the API route. This is an error if the API route can't actually be called, like the API call failed, which I've never have happened. So I never really know how to deal with it because it's never happened to me. Maybe it's a skill issue there for other people who have that problem. But, I haven't faced it, so I'm not going to deal with it. But feel free to add it if you've somehow come up with that issue. All right, let's go back to platform header. Where did we actually create the... Yep, we created the org toggle. We're going to import this use set primary org. And let's do this from @/features/orgs. API use set primary org. The reason that I do this and not just do the // notation is that if for whatever reason I decide to move org toggle around, whether moving it into this components folder here, like with the logo or any of the shadcn stuff, or move it into this _ components folder, none of these are gonna break if you use the / notation. And for a lot of the stuff that you've downloaded using npm, inside of your node modules, you don't need like an @ so you don't really worry about that. But for all the stuff that we've created on our own, the orgs, the hooks, and the stuff that's grabbed from shadcn, just use this / notation. Cool. There's going to be a couple things that we pass into our org toggle. So we're going to need to get some props. So org toggle props. We're going to have primary org, type of orgs dot infer select. That makes this primary org the same type as is specified within our database. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So inside of this org schema, so we're just matching what we see here within this primary orgs variable. Then we're going to need user orgs, and that will be type of orgs dot infer select array. These things are passed in, so we're going to need to grab them. Primary org, user orgs, and org toggle props. Great. We're going to grab const router is equal to use router. Yeah, let's create our function. Or actually, let's create first, just so that it's clear for people to understand. Let's create our popover first here. We're going to do a popover trigger, which will be a button. And it'll have a class name with cn, so it's conditional. Border -2 h12 hover cursor pointer items center justify center margin right of 2 and width will be of 125 pixels. And if this is the primary org, then do bg sky of 400, hover bg sky of 300. Cool. Oh, whoops. We have some additional fields of the button. Disabled will be of primary org does not exist. Actually, I just noticed that if we yeah, we still need the styling even if the button is disabled. So if the button is disabled, we won't be able to click it, and we'll need the style here. So yes, we do need both of these. Variant equals outline here. Inside of here, if we have primary org with the image URL, so because we made having a photo optional, so if there is a photo, then we'll add in the image here. Where did I put avatar? Oh, okay, avatar. I put it there. All right, alt equals org avatar here. Class name of bg sky of 500, hover cursor pointer, and hover bg sky of 300, margin right of 2, height of 24. Source is primary org.image URL, and width is of 24. Great. And then we're going to have an h1 tag here, class name, font, semi-bold, and truncate it if it's too long. Whoops. and we're going to have primary org dot name. And if for whatever reason there is no name, just do question mark, question mark, question mark. All right. So we have our popover trigger. Now we need to do our popover contents here. So if there is a primary org, then we do div class name grid gap y of 4. We're going to have an h4 here. Whoops. Oh, what am I doing? H4 here. Now class name of just truncate. And inside of this, do current org colon span of class name. Whoops. Class name font medium. And put in our primary org dot name. So just adding a little extra emphasis on it, but having current org be normal. Then we're gonna have a separator. Oh, we didn't actually import that. How silly of me. Let's put that in there. Separator. User orgs dot length is greater than 1. We'll have this section. We'll have a div class name of flex dash column gap y of 2 slash div h4 class name truncate switch to org colon user orgs question mark filter org arrow org.id not equal to primary org.id. So we're just grabbing all of the user orgs that is not the primary organization. We could have filtered that out before we pass it as a prop, but by doing it this way, we will ensure that user orgs does not have the primary org. All right, so we're going to grab our org here, and we're going to have a button for each of the organizations. We're going to have a class name of justify start with dash full. We're going to have a key be org.id. We're going to have an on click be something. We'll write that later. And variant will be outline. Inside of this button, we will have, if there is an image, then we're going to have an avatar, class name of BG Sky 500, hover cursor pointer, hover BG Sky of 300, margin rate of 2, PX padding of 0 on either side, and a size of 6. Then we're going to add in an avatar image, alt equals org avatar, class name object dash cover, source is equal to org.image URL. So for some reason I wasn't able to get the avatar to work inside of the trigger. Not 100% sure why it doesn't work, so I just used a regular image instead, and it seemed to work. So, I don't know why avatar should really be the thing that I want to use, but wasn't able to use it up here. So instead I used an image. Down here I'm able to use the avatar, so I'll use it here. And then, let's see. Yeah, we're going to have an H4 here, class name of margin left of 3. So we're adding a little space between the text that we're going to have here and the avatar. We're going to have truncate in case it's too long. And then we're going to have org.name. Great. Oh, yes. And underneath every single one of these buttons. Let's see. Did I forget some stuff? No. Here it is. So, yeah. So we're just going to add in at the bottom here another separator. Cool. Just separate out between each of the different organizations. So now we can do org toggle here. But now we need to create a way to grab organization or grab the information of organization toggle. Now I could do an API call here excuse me. I could create an API call here to grab the primary organization and the user orgs. I think it's probably a lot better if we just pass it as props and allow for whoever is, or whatever component is using the platform header component to provide that instead of having the platform header component create an API call for that. So we're going to grab these two things here. We're going to grab a primary org and we're going to grab a user orgs here and then pass that down into this org toggle. So primary org is primary org, and then user orgs will be user orgs. Great. We need to create a skeleton for our org toggle, and it's going to be really simple because we're just trying to mimic a rectangle button. So we're going to do export const org toggle skeleton. That's going to be a skeleton with a class name of height of 12, margin right of 2, and width of 125 pixels. So we're just mirroring. Where is it? Yeah, we're mirroring this margin right, this width, no border, but this height of 2. Cool. So we didn't have a on click, so we need to create that. So let me see here. So const on click is equal to new primary org name, which would be of type string, and an org ID string here. And we're going to set primary org mutation. So we need to grab our mutation. So const set primary org mutation is equal to use set primary org. And we're going to do dot mutate here. Nope, not mutate async, just mutate. We're going to pass in org ID here. If you remember, inside of this use set primary orgs mutation here. It's taking in JSON, which will be of just the org ID. So that's all we're going to pass in. And we're going to create a, so it takes in 2 arguments. So one will be this org ID, and then another one will be us creating on error. And for now, I'm just going to do console.error here, and then on success, just do console log success. The only reason that we're grabbing the new primary org name is for the status messages that we're going to have. But first, we're going to need to, let me see here. Where do I? Yep. So inside of our layout here. So based off of what CN says here, right, in our root layout, we need to provide the toaster. So, and the reason that it's called a toaster, by the way, if you haven't realized it already, just like how a piece of toast pops out from a toaster when it's finished, this is a kind of a pop-up. So that's the reference there for why it's called a toaster / a toast. Little hint there. Cool. So I think that, okay, so we're ready to use their toaster. So let's see. All right, const, and inside of these curly braces, toast is equal to use toaster, use toast. And then, instead of this console error, I actually didn't need to do this, but we can do toast here, call it as a function, and provide an object to it. Description, error.message, and title of error. Do remember that this error here is related to success or failure of the API call, not the error that we provided within our API call. Technically, if we return the error within the API call, it means that there was a successful API call, right? That produced an error, as opposed to an error that did not allow us to do an API call. So really big distinction between the error and success here, and error and success message that we created within our API routes. So this will be toast description and we're going to use these ticks here, tick quotes, so that's right next to the 1 on the keyboard, in case you're looking for it. Organization $, paren, new primary organization name set as primary, and then title, set as primary, exclamation point. Cool. So that's our on-click. So let's add in our on-click into this button here. And then the very last thing outside of, I can't just pass that in. I need to pass in that on-click. I need to pass in the org name and the org ID. Great. So outside of this grouping, we're also going to create another button, much simpler button, with a class name of width of full. On click will be router.push, go to onboarding. And the reason that we're going to onboarding is to create a new org. So cool. That should be our org toggle. And so if we do npm run dev and go into our site here, refresh everything, we should have a little button with our first organization. Oh, and it says question mark, question mark, question mark. Interesting. Why is that the case? Nothing inside of here. Oh, right, because inside of our home inside of our home platform header, right, we did not pass in stuff. So we actually need to create an API route within this home platform header to be able to grab in the primary organization and user organizations for this platform header. So let's get on making that.